All right, let's move now to this top story. The National Assembly has voted this afternoon against a bill to change Section 25 of the Constitution to explicitly allow for the expropriation of land without compensation. Now, on the one hand, the DA and the Freedom Front Plus arguing any amendment will amount to an infringement of individual rights to property. On the other hand, the EFF arguing that all land should be owned by the state. And the ANC somewhere in the middle, trying to strike a compromise, but failing to get that two-thirds majority needed. But the ANC says even without this agreement, it's just one more step on the road, and they remain fully committed to land reform. Well, I'm joined now by our Minister of Justice and Correctional Services, Ronald Lamola, who spoke during that debate today. Minister, thank you very much for your time. So that bill not adopted, but you have said that the expropriation of land without compensation, it's one of the instruments to help the state move forward, but you don't have that agreement. So how does it hinder your land reform plans?
Yeah, indeed, it is not all lost. As we have said, that it was going to be one of the instruments that the state needs to succeed in its program of accelerating the land reform program. But we will proceed with the expropriation bill that is currently before Parliament, that states the circumstances under which land will be expropriated. We will also proceed with the redistribution bill, which is in the process at rural development. And we will also proceed with the land court bill that is also before Parliament as we speak. We will also proceed with the Communal Land Rights Act bill, which is also in the pipeline within the Department of Rural Development to ensure there is security of tenure amongst the rural land. But as we speak now, government is in the process of releasing about 700,000 hectares of land that we are releasing to the people of this country. So we are proceeding with all the instruments that we have currently at our disposal to accelerate the program of land reform.
So there's a number of different pieces of legislation that are now also making their way through the process to become law. And of course, those won't need as high a bar as was required today, because of course it needs a much higher bar to change the Constitution. It needs just a simple majority to pass a bill. So let's probe where the ANC stands on this issue of land expropriation, because we've got the extremes. We've got the DA on the one hand saying, no, you can't touch this. You've got the EFF on the other. And it seems to me from what you said in Parliament today that the ANC is trying to chart a course. You were saying today that even communist China, which used to own all the land, has recognized the need for a bit of both, some state-owned, some private-owned. You also mentioned Zimbabwe, saying that they too have realized that what they did with seizing farms was not the way to go, and they started compensating those farmers who lost their land. But you also say, to the DA's argument, that there is precedent across the globe for nil compensation, which is similar to the expropriation without compensation. What is the next step in getting agreement? Because I think for anything to be successful, while you might not need as high a bar for some of these pieces of legislation, you do need buy-in from the other political parties, surely, to move forward with some of this.
Yeah, indeed, the position of the ANC has been very clear from the onset. Hence, we engage with almost all the political parties that we have mentioned, because we recognize from the onset that we need the buy-in of everyone. We have also engaged civil society, we have engaged the business, everyone that we could be able to engage, because we understand that the responsibility of governing needs us to pull South Africans together. But if all people don't want to come into the party, we have to continue with what we have at our disposal, which is the simple majority that we have, which will enable us to pass the legislations that I've just mentioned, that we will proceed with. And we also call upon all South Africans to join hands with us to ensure that there is equitable distribution of land, the landowners and everyone. It is not sustainable to have the majority of the population not having equitable access to the land in this country for residents, for farming, or for any economic activity. Hence, we now call for everyone and the Department of Rural Development has put a myriad of policies that will enable even private players to come into the space. They've also put a donation policy. So there are various platforms and initiatives which all South Africans who wants to play a role in the land reform program can be able to join in hands with government so that we achieve the equitable redistribution goal.
Why has the ANC not done better in 27 years of trying to redress land inequality? It's really been the task of the government to make sure it happened.
Yes, and we have stated it. The high-level panel that was led by former President Butlante stated that one of the problems was the inflation of the prices, the market value. There is no country in the world that can run and succeed with land reform, with a market-driven land reform policy. But also there was corruption, which we do not deny. There was also litigation that sometimes took very long. So there are various myriad of issues that affected the land reform program. But now we know all those issues. We have learned from that experience. We need a reinvigorated land reform program that will be transparent, that will be open to all South Africans, that we were going to ensure that it succeed in a manner that it resolve some of the challenges that we have raised.
So the ANC, it certainly seems from the experience of looking at this expropriation or the amendment bill that, of course, was not successful, it did give us a good idea of where the various parties stand. The ANC resolving at its 54th conference to expropriate land without paying for it under certain conditions. Can you give me an example of what some of those conditions are? Because I think that's where a lot of the anxiety for private landowners comes in.
It is in the expropriation bill that is before Parliament, abandoned land, the land that is lying, that is not being used, and the land that could be posing risk. There's a lot of land across the country which is abandoned, which can be expropriated at that nil compensation. So the expropriation deal does provide the categories within which those lands can be expropriated. The reason we are not in agreement to expropriate all land and put it under the hands of the state is that it will have the effect of even depriving black South Africans who will have bought the land with their own hard labor, or those that will have restituted land to them, whom we have given title deeds, or those that we have leased the land to. So that is the reason why we will not agree to expropriate all land and put it under the hands of the state, because it will have a reverse effect of providing insecure land rights to all South Africans, which is not the intention of a land reform. The land reform is aimed to redress the imbalances of the past, is aimed to ensure that there is security of tenure. It is ensured to strengthen the land rights of South Africans. Hence, we advocate for expropriation of certain categories. We also advocate for restitution of land, but we also advocate for us to redistribute the land that we already have, which is under the state. And as I've said, we're already in the process of distributing about 700,000 hectares.
It's such an emotive issue, isn't it? You know, a piece of land to call your very own. It's not just a physical place to call your home. It's suggested that you have dignity, that you have agency. It's very, very emotive, particularly, of course, given our history, when black South Africans were simply not allowed to own land under apartheid law. There is a very real concern that if we don't get this land reform right, this issue will be used to create political instability. We saw in July what that instability can do. You spoke earlier of joining hands. How do you plan to avoid that going forward, given that even amongst our political parties we're seeing quite a lot of polarity and not enough people coming into the middle? What's the plan going forward to create a sense of unity of this vision?
Yeah, we are doing it through the IMC on land reform that is chaired by the Deputy President, which is tasked to come up with the myriad of these legislations that will come through rural development, that will come through us, the Land Court Act and the various government departments, but also to engage everyone in society, who, including the private sector, to come to the party to provide and also give the land where it is possible, but also to ensure that all the legislations are being implemented, and all the bills that we said must be put through Parliament, they go through Parliament and they pass the process. So we are going to proceed in that manner, and we are hopeful that South Africans will join us in this journey.
Thank you so much for your time this evening. Minister of Justice and Correctional Services, Ronald Lamola. Of course, he was part of that debate this afternoon about the attempt to amend the Constitution for expropriation of land without compensation.